Hi, guys, I'm Joy,
And I'm Andrew.
and welcome to the Joyfully Golden podcast.
Happy Tuesday, Joy. How are you doing?
Doing good, cannot complain. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother. Thank you. So, today we're focusing on living life on purpose.
Yes, we are. So, before we dive into it and talk about what it means like to live life on purpose, I like usually when there's long sentences with a lot of different words, and it's to kind of like focus on each of the words and try to see what we get from each of them. So, I guess I want to hear your thoughts on the living part, for example. What do you think of when you think of living? Because there's some big words in there. We have living, we have purpose. What are some of your thoughts on those specific words?
Sure. So, for me, living, and there's to be alive, breathing your day to day stuff, but living to me is more of like it's an action. It's more of a decision. And then you've got living life. It's like you could have said being alive. It's like, no, we're living life. So we're purposefully living life. And then on purpose, meaning that we're deciding on what we're doing. I don't think of it as a mundane day-to-day thing where I wake up, I eat, I go to work, I come home, rinse and repeat, have my weekends off. More so than it's we're doing something on purpose and we're deciding every step of the way.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, that's it, guys. That's all we have for you today. Nah, just kidding. But no, that was really well put. And I love that specific part in the beginning when you said that it's not just being alive. It's an action, and I feel like that's so powerful because when you think about it, being alive is not necessarily an action. We breathe. We exist, and that's just what it is. But what happens when you put intention behind being alive and it becomes living? Like what happens when you put the power behind it, that action that you're referring to, and then you stop just existing and being alive and you start living. And I think that's so powerful, even when you think of this whole concept overall of living life on purpose, because I personally don't think that it's possible to live life on purpose unless you intentional about it. I don't think, and I mean, you can tell me if you think otherwise, but I don't think living life on purpose is something that just happens. I feel like it's something that you have to almost put effort into, like put thoughts and action into deciding to live your life on purpose.
Absolutely.
Versus I feel like the being alive, it's more passive versus living on purpose. I feel like there's more of a, like you said it so well. I'm just gonna keep going back to it. Like,
Thanks, man.
yeah,
Yeah, because I think especially with COVID and what's going on now, I mean, we're several months into a different way of living our lives. We're limited on what we're able to do, and you and I, with our social distancing, is why you and I are allowed to actually see each other.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that even though there's a temporary block on what's going on, that we're still having goals, having things, plans. We can come out of this as nothing's changed. We've stayed home and saved some money maybe on traveling and eating out, or what skills are we developing? And that kind of goes into not just this interesting time that we're living in, but life itself. I mean, what goals do you have? And I think what I'm trying to speak to here right now is maybe people like our age in their 20s, or maybe people in their 30s and 40s, is what are you doing with your life? And think about it really, like what's the last goal that you accomplished, or what's the last stepping stone that you've reached to, or are you currently treading and just moving through the day to day and don't maybe really have a goal that you're currently set.
That's good. And I like that you specifically refer to COVID-19 right now, because it's still here.
Yeah.
It's still happening. We're still like literally fully in the midst of figuring out, I mean, what is life at this point? Like what can we do? What can we not do? For how long? And all that. And I can only imagine how that's affecting people at so many different levels. But in this specific area of living on purpose, like, well, I mean, even for me, like some days it's hard to to make that choice to decide to make the best of a day.
Mm.
Because now with the fact that we're in quarantine and with everything happening, I feel like there's so many, because usually I think there's already a lot of obstacles to living your life to the fullest, but now I feel like there's just so many reasons to just not try even, because like everything is slow, and the opportunities to be down, to be depressed, to be lazy are just everywhere around us every single day.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if any other time, now it's really a challenge to make that choice and decide to wake up every morning and think of how am I gonna take this day, these 24 hours that I'm given, and actually intentionally spend my time today moving forward towards a specific direction that I have, to specific goals that I have, and though it's hard, it's possible. And I think that's kind of like what we're trying to get at, that
Yeah.
it's challenging time to do a lot of things, but especially to find ways to be intentional with your life, with your time, with your skills, with your gifts, your dreams, your goals and whatnot. But we do believe that there is a way to do that, and we do believe that there is power in being connected to people who can encourage you during this time, to be plugged into people, friends, families that can help you make it through it, because we need each other. We need to lean on one another if we're going to find a way to see some kind of a brighter side of this whole situation, and find the strength to rise up and say, you know what, this is a crazy time, crazy situation, but I'm going to live my life on purpose today.
So with that 24-hour period, when you've got your day, let's factor in a few things. Let's say, okay, 6 hours to sleep. So that leaves what, 18. And then let's say, 8 to 10 hours work. Let's go with 10. So you've still got, 8 hours left. And say it takes you 2 hours to travel. So you've got 6 hours. And then you eat and a little, do whatever, hang out. So 5 hours, I would imagine. Like for me, I definitely have 5 hours a day that's not dedicated to work, sleep, food, any of those other things. And then for me, I know that if I choose to go home and watch TV or play a video game, it's something that I'm doing, and it may be relaxing. It may be something that's like, okay, but I know that if I want to fully take advantage and purposefully work towards a goal, then in that several hours, I have to make that decision to do something. Now, you've been doing a lot of film projects, and you've been doing a lot of working with videos and music and choreography. And so what allows you to purposefully decide to focus your energy that I believe all of us have that time, but how do you decide to actually put it towards that productive?
Wow, that's such a loaded question. And I think from the get-go, I love the fact that you refer so heavily to time, because I don't remember where I heard this quote from, but I read somewhere that life, is made off of time. And pretty much what you decide to do with your time, the time that you are, that's what you choose to do with your life. And so it's crazy that you went there, because it's impossible to do something with your life unless you do something with your time, because your life is made up of your time, but to answer the question, I think really it ties to the purpose part of it, I guess, for me, because I'm extremely driven and most people who spend enough time around me will get a glimpse of that, and I just thrive based on where I'm going, and I strongly believe that if I didn't have the goals and the dreams that I have for the future, I don't think I would have been as driven, first of all, and I don't think I would have done as much as I've done to today. And even though it's not that much, but it's significant moving forward, because it's that journey ongoing. And so I think what helps me value that time and choose sometimes, instead of maybe resting or just like playing games, to schedule things, and make things happen, it's where I'm going, the goals that I have. And I'm not going to tell you guys all the goals that I have, because maybe that's for a different conversation, a different day. But because of the size of my goals, and it gives me a purpose in the activity that I do. It reminds me of something that Tony Robbins says, and he says, when you think of, because a lot of people refer of like having goals that push you and whatnot, but he says, no, pushing is not as powerful as being pulled. And he says you should have goals that inspire you enough that they actually pull you. And that's literally how I feel sometimes, because there's days in which I wake up and I'm like, man, I just do not want to do anything today. Like, I'm tired from what I've been doing for the past, however many days, and I just don't feel focused enough. I just feel out of balance. But when I think of of where I'm going, of what I want to accomplish, of the legacy that I want to leave, and the impacts that I want to have, that somehow pulls me, and somehow it takes me out of that place and gets me moving, gets me doing what I need to be doing right now. And so I think as we refer even to this idea of living life on purpose, it's so important to consider what are the goals that you have in front of you, because the reality is, and again, I speak for myself, it might not apply to everyone, but I know 100% that if I did not have the goals that I have and the things that I want to reach one day, there is no way I would be giving 125% every day, like, because then what's the point, if
Right.
I'm not moving towards anything. But because I am moving towards something, every little bit that I'm able to do today counts, because it's not in vain. It's moving towards something, so yeah, that helps me. But yeah, I wanted to ask you too, because I mean, you have a full-time job, and besides that, you find time to work with actually several creatives in different fields, practically helping them, managing them in so many different ways. So I feel like you too, in your own life, you have your hands on a lot of different things, which is impossible to do unless you find a way to, properly manage your time and all that. But I guess I wanted to ask for you too, as far as living life on purpose, how do you find the strength, the energy, the motivation to do those, but also maybe even some practical tools that you use on your day-to-day to find ways to still be involved in all these things and to actively be choosing to live your life on purpose. What are some things that maybe you've tried, that work for you or that help you on that journey of living your life on purpose?
So you may need to remind me in case I forget all the questions that you just asked.
I know, I asked
but
I'm sorry.
And I appreciate that. And for one, I could be way more productive with my time. I can tell you that.
That's all of us, man.
But I think the important part was that I was fortunate enough to grow up with both my parents married. They're still married. And I was told at a young age that I could be whatever I wanted to be. And I think that anyone truly can be whatever they want to be. I think, the only two finite points in your life are when you're born and when you die. I forget who said that, but someone important did. And what we do in the meantime is really, it's up to us. I have a job so that I can, afford to do the things that I'm passionate about. I love seeing what people can accomplish by working together. And for me, being able to take the time to work with people that are so driven, like people like yourself, where you have that skill or that passion and that unrelenting focus, drive to just be able to say, you know what, I'm going to do this because this is what it means to be alive, and this is my purpose, is to bring this art or this joy or this experience to people around me. That's what attracts me so much, and I think that's what makes it easier for me to work with people. Because most people, they don't love their jobs. Something around, I think it's like 70-75% of people have a job that they don't actually enjoy doing. However, if you look at what your job is allowing you to do, what that income source is allowing you to do, then that means that on those, those 5-6 hours a day that are yours to do, and then your, the time off, unless you're working 7 days a week, what are you doing with that time? Wow. And then what are you purposefully deciding to do? And I think a lot of it, there's the I don't have time excuse. Well, I disagree with that. Unless you block out your day, and if you really don't have time, what are you doing? And is it worth what you're doing?
That's
because
so good.
Albert Einstein said, I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So, yeah.
Nice.
And I've been guilty of that, thinking well, why am I not here? For the longest time, doing something like this podcast was always a thought. The inspiration was there, the drive was there, but it wasn't until you and I had this conversation that we decided, well, why not? Let's try.
Yeah.
And why are we doing it? Because it's something that I think is valuable. I think it's something that if only you and I are the only two people that this is for, great. Hey. And we've got documented journey of our growth, our progression, our friendship, our experiences. But I think it's a good message. And I like hearing positive messages from other people. So then that little kernel of thought in my mind was, what if I got to be that person? Even if I'm quoting and referencing all these other great things that other people said, it's there. Look, we've got the internet, and I know I'm rambling here, but if you think about it, we've got, in America here, we've got a basically infinite wealth of knowledge for the cost of either your phone or accessing Wi-Fi. Yet a lot of people are unhappy. And I don't think it's because maybe that they're not taking advantage of all the free education and things that are out there, but I think it's because people, in my opinion, will get stuck on this perception of what isn't. Because people will either be well, I've got this job and I have to have this job to make this money, otherwise I can't do X, Y, Z. Or I've got to go home and take care of my kids, and then I have to feed them, and I have to do homework, or I got to walk my dog, spend time with my wife or my husband, and all these different things. And then people go, well, now I'm tired and I need to go to bed. And it's okay, but what's wrong with that life? However, if you're saying, I want to do a podcast, or I want to do a film, or I want to paint, or I want to work on cars, or I want to run a marathon. Okay, that's an idea, and that's something that I think gives purpose to what you want to do. But if you're not going to then say, okay, what does it take to get there? I think, for me, for the longest time, that always got me stuck. It's I would see all these things, and it's you watch a movie, and the characters in there, and the development and everything, but working on some of your films at our small, humble scale of our little to no budget, there's time, energy, rehearsals, effort, lines, mistakes, everything that goes into it for this finished project. And I think that it's important to see what something could be, but not get so focused on, well, that's just how it is, and somehow my life's not linking up. And I think then it takes on more of a passive approach to where you're not purposely putting in the effort, and you're just stuck with this dream and this idea.
Wow.
And so for me, all those things, what has helped me, and hopefully I've answered your question, is that knowing that there are things that I can do that give value and purpose and meaning to my life here. There are some things that are required, but there are other things that it's up to me. And at the end of the day, when I go to bed, I'll have either made decisions to purposefully live the life the way that I want it, or if I don't, life will make those decisions for me.
Wow. That was loaded. Oh, man. There's two things I think that you said, and actually maybe that we both said at some point, but I really just want to hammer on that way, sometimes when you repeat some nuggets, it really stays with people. And I think the two really big thing that I feel at least my heart and my brain really just I holding on to right now from everything we said was, first of all, I think one of the keys to living a life of purpose is to choose what that purpose is going to be. Whether you're going to find it, or whether someone is going to help you realize it, or whether you're going to search for it until you find it, but trying to identify that. And then once you do identify that, realize that you have the responsibility to do what it takes with your time, within your means of time that you can spare, to work on it. Because I think one thing that's even worse than not knowing what your purpose is, it's knowing what your purpose is and then completely ignoring to work on it. And then that's going back to that insanity again, and thinking that somehow something is going to happen when you just leave it on the side, and just keep it as a thought. Right. And so, yes, I really think those two are just so key and so important to remember, like as, and again, life is not this black and white, like shape figure. No, life is just so complex and so weird. So we constantly evolving, constantly growing. So if you don't know what our purpose is right now, I mean, there's nothing wrong with you at all. But it means don't give up. It means keep exploring, keep trying new things, keep watching videos, on YouTube, see what is out there, different skills, different profession, everything. Because once you find something that sets your heart on fire, that's the thing you need to focus on. And you might not be able to focus on it with 100% of your time yet, because you might have a job, you might have bills to pay, and that's real life, but just do a little bit of it at a time, like research into it, and maybe take a class on it and maybe volunteer on a project around it. But little by little, start immersing yourself purposefully into that thing. And before you know it, you're going to be living a life that has so much meaning, not because you're making more money or because, you're achieving fame or anything, but simply because you're actively pursuing that thing that I was put here to do. And I think as human beings, there's very few things that are more fulfilling than that, than to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and to know that this thing, I'm so passionate about this, and I know it's tied to my purpose and my reason for being here in this world. And though I'm not doing as much of it as I want yet, I'm doing small bits of it. And I think there's beauty, there's power, and there's meaning in that, And so, so as we wrap up today, I guess, I would like to ask, because and again, you might have to repeat something that I already said, my bad, but what is one skill that you've been able to apply in your life regarding living life on purpose? Just one thing, it can be a skill, it can be an activity, just something that has helped you live that your life on purpose that you would like to share with anyone who's listening.
So I think that's a good question. Then I realized you asked me that earlier and I hadn't answered it yet. Is being willing to fail. Because there are so many times in my life where I have either not done the right thing or I could have done it better, whether it's climbing, whether it's at work, whether it's with a friendship or anything. But the part that I'm focusing on is that knowing that failure is part of it. Like if you're going to decide that this is what I want to be, this is what I want to do, not thinking that you're ever going to fail, well, that's just being naive. Like for me, the reason I'm where I'm at today, the reason I'm able to do the things that I can do today is because I've been able to accept that I'm going to fail sometimes and not being afraid of that. Do I want to fail? No, of course not. And I think that's a human thing that everybody probably feels that way, but it's being okay. Not being afraid to fail led me to learn how to play guitar. I'm not good at it, but I took guitar classes. Led me to get to the job that I have, led me to get to the home that I'm gonna have, has led me to meet the people that I've met in my life, do the things that I do now. Wow. Like if I acted on, and sometimes it's just like that immediate, it's like, oh, I'm afraid, or and it doesn't have to be I'm afraid, but it comes as a, well, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe it's not just internal, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's some astronomical sign that says, well, maybe you shouldn't do this. But there's a lot of things that we grow up and we're told what to do and what not to do. As we live in a society of people that we've got rules and laws and stuff, which I think is helpful. But when it really comes down to it, the skill that's best served me is that I would rather try and not be afraid of the results than come to the end of my life and not have tried.
Wow.
And not be able to do anything.
So good. Oh man, so good. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And kind of like trying to answer the same question. I think for me, one of the undeniable facts about living life on purpose is it's impossible to do alone. And I mean, again, this applies to me and my experience. So there might be people out there who are just so driven, and just so amazing that they don't need anybody. But
Right.
I know for me, I mean, as far as yesterday, like there's a couple of quotes and a video that you sent to me, and I needed that. Like I was in a place in which like I was wrestling with some thoughts and with some emotions, and you sent me those, and I even called you later to tell you because it was literally life giving, and you cannot substitute that with anything. Unfortunately, there's just nothing that pours into another human life like another human life, whether it's through a book, through a video, through a message on YouTube. There is just nothing like that power of a life inspiring another life. And so if you have the ability to find a friend or friends, at least one who is on fire enough for life to at least be trying to live this life purposefully, because iron sharpens iron. So if you want to sharpen yourself as a piece of iron, find another piece of iron to sharpen you. You know that. And I do understand. Some people, you might be in a place where there's nobody, or it seems like there's nobody around you who is like that. Well, guess what? We go back to that internet point. You have hundreds of speakers on YouTube that will be that for you for the time being. Because eventually, I do believe that it is important to eventually build that with people, real people that you can call, talk to, text, sit with. But if right now you don't have the access to that yet, go online. Find people talking about things like that. People that will inspire you, that will speak life into you, that will tell you, you might be tired right now, but you got this. You can keep going. And as you keep hearing it and hearing it and hearing it, eventually, somehow, some way, life will bring you someone else alongside who has those same seeds in them. And before you know it, you're gonna have one person, two people, and a network around you of people who can pour into you like that. And before you know it, you're living life purposefully. Not because you're so strong or so powerful, but because you have people to lean on in times of weaknesses, in times of doubt or fear, and all those things. So that would be one of my personal, just advice, because in my personal life, it has tremendously, helped me and just sustain this lifestyle. So yeah, man. Thank you for today. Thank you for this conversation overall.
Absolutely.
And thanks to all of you guys who are listening, who are watching, who jumped in. Again, it is an honor to be able to this conversation in front of you guys, and eventually we'll create ways in which you can join in and things like that. But just thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and that's all we have for you guys today. But we're looking forward to seeing you next Tuesday. So stay tuned for the next episode,
And until then, stay joyfully golden.
see you guys.